Forevermore, you are all I long for, all I worship and adore. In other words, please be true. In other words,
we are in the process of admitting participants. So enjoy some music for a minute or two. We will start at exactly 5 past. exciting to see all of you join. We are just admitting everyone and ensuring we get the mic check on. And if you can, in the meantime, just share and tell us on chat where you are joining from. We'll be glad to hear from you. We'll be glad to give you a shout out as the rest of the participants get admitted. We are starting very shortly now. Nice to see all of you. Very nice. Welcome, Tanvir. We can see where the rest of you are joining from. Welcome on board. We are just beginning in the next 1 minute. Very nice to have you on board, Agnes. Karibu sana. I hope Champala is treating you well. Fantastic. Miles, karibu sana. Judith, welcome on call. In the next less than a minute, we are going to be speaking. Yeah, so if you can mute on your end if you're not necessarily speaking at the time, so we don't get technical disruption. Minnie, welcome. You joined pretty early. So given that it's 5 past, good afternoon, good morning, good evening for some of us. My name is Maxi. As the title shows there, I am the CEO and principal consultant at Development Dynamics. I am also working with the firm for a number of years in the purpose, what we call the purpose economy. And we offer strategy advice to investors. We build the capacity of change makers, and we co-create innovations or innovative solutions with both sides of the ecosystem, and help secure, manage, and measure impact. So aside from our desk-facing report writing, research and analysis routine, we also have this fantastic platform that we call Last Thursdays as a virtual dialogue space, where we create and hold space for connections, for learning, and for collaboration across the social impact ecosystem. This platform has been such a delightful and inspiring journey over the last few months, and we are truly delighted to have this opportunity to connect with you again. And for context about Last Thursdays, then we'll introduce how it comes into impact in Africa. Our first ever edition in January for Last Thursdays covered the intersections of gender, reproductive health, and climate rights in Africa. In February, we explored metrics that matter, and in March, we explored the power of intersectional feminism, a topic we were really keen to approach as students of the game with very sincere and childlike interest. All these episodes are available on our Development Dynamics YouTube page. It will be shared here by the administrator, and you can log in and see what the conversations have been. So it's our great pleasure, it's our honor, it's our delight to extend a very warm welcome to all of you who are joining us for this 4th edition of Last Thursdays. And it's today's particular episode or today's particular conversation is very, very special to us. We are covering impact in Africa. And previously, we've had sessions inviting you to listen to thoughts and perspectives shared by a panel on the matter that I've just touched on. But this time around, it's special because you are the panelists. So now just sit back and comment and share, and we are just going to act as facilitators of the dialogue. And as we hear from you, as active audiences, we will be we'll just be offering guidance and direction of how we go. And secondly, in keeping with the spirit of collaboration, this particular edition of Last Thursday is happening in conjunction with our collaborators, Well-Made Strategy, a fantastic team, and it's my utmost delight and pleasure to, at this stage, welcome my co-host, the managing partner at Well-Made Strategy, Julian Masharia. Karibu sana.
Hi, thanks, Maxi, and good evening to everyone, and thank you so much for joining us. Looking forward to have a fantastic session with you.
Yes, indeed. And Well-Made Strategy, Development Dynamics, we've acted as consultants and think tanks in the space, in the social impact economy. And the work we've done over the years in our individual, organizational, and collaborative capacity, it has given us access to front row seats, observing key trends in the world of social impact. There is no better way to put it than the fact that we are living in a polycrisis with nearly sort of like 300 million people around the world urgently needing all sorts of support and assistance that your organizations are working. We are seeing conflict both internally and externally. And a lot of worrisome experiences to even share. There's climate emergency that's working all over. Nature seems to be magnifying the already pressing issues that we are facing as a society. Economic decline is reducing and hampering our ability to survive, let alone thrive. There's a lot of geopolitical tensions with ideologies at war, and the people bearing the brunt of it all are you and I, who are the front line of working on purpose-driven, impact-focused work with the communities in order for the communities that we serve and for the people that we serve through proxy and also very directly to thrive and not just survive. And the thing, though, is that as we work in this area, we are seeing that the work itself calls for a lot from us, but then our organizations themselves and how we program for impact and how we manage and track our initiatives is something that is evolving, and it's something that we are going to discuss today. Julian, you and I have discussed a lot about the how we find ourselves finding difficulty to manage priorities while keeping the machine running. And I will invite you to just offer your reflection on that as we proceed.
Absolutely. So welcome, everyone. So just to give you an overview of how the session is going to run, we are going to start off just setting the stage, kind of explaining why we wanted to do this convening. And this is the second one. We did an initial one about 3 months ago, and we learned so much, and it was in person. And we realized so many people wanted to come, but of course, the logistics of coming over to Nairobi. And this is one of the reasons we decided to do it virtually, to be able to allow anyone to plug in from wherever you are. So welcome. I'm sure there are probably some repeat guests. You're welcome again to reflect with us. And how we are going to do is we are going to set the stage. Then we have a series of prompts and questions, which we are going to ask you to do. So just a small assignment. And that will be handled by Moses and Mombi. And the idea is just some reflection questions. So we've identified about 3 areas, and I'm going to go into depth into that. Then we are going to go into smaller rooms, breakout rooms, that we are going to discuss. And it's about peer-to-peer. And for us, what we seek to do is to explore what are these challenges. So development dynamics or well-made strategy. We don't think we have the solutions, but at least we know where the pain points are. And what we want to see is how do we collaborate together? Potentially, how do we make a movement of practitioners where we are supporting each other and sharpening our skills? Because I think we are all serving one goal. We are all serving Africa, and we want to see ourselves develop and solve our own problems, and that makes sense for our context. So the first thing I'll want to start by talking about, of course, Maxi is introduced himself there. I'm growing out my hair soon, so next time I'll have a funky do like that. And of course, I'm Julian Mashari, the Well-Made Strategy, and I think collectively we probably have probably 30 years of experience working with organizations across the continent, and this is what we are bringing today and what we've seen as gap areas. So what you're going to see today is you're going to look at 3 areas, and we're going to go into details for each. So the first thing we want to explore here, and I'll collaborate on this session with Maxi, is that the reality of social justice. We do very complex work, but it's easy to get caught up in the weeds or lost in the weeds, because you find some of us, you're the ED, you're in charge of mail, you're the one who does fundraising, you have to go to the community, you have to book the venue, you have to pay out transport reimbursements. We know the kind of work that we do. And there are times you're so tired, you're emotionally invested, and you're wondering, is this going anywhere? Then you see an RFP, or you go meet a donor and they ask you, so how are you moving the needle? What impact have you created? And you know you have, but how do you explain that? How do you get position yourself in a way that you're impacting your community and also demonstrating that impact, and of course seeing systemic change across the board? Maxine.
Yeah, so that's why we say then you find that you've got to be developing the plane while flying it, which is just sort of like an idiom to say we have got to wear multiple lenses at multiple times. And with our collective experience, we've identified 3 key things to focus on. And these are the key things that keep a lot of us as leaders, a lot of us as practitioners awake at night. The how wholesome our organizations become in a time that we are living, where it is important to think about diversity, equality, equity, inclusion within our organizations, but also where the lens of profit and where the lens of purpose, we have to be very wholesome. Our programs themselves, most of the time, whether they are donor funded or they are initiated by our own organizations with capital from inside, we figure that our programs have got to provide a proper balance from inception all the way to evaluation, and for us to be able to tell the story. And then, and equally important, is that none of us really wants to be in the space just to be in the space, or just to do a fantastic program that is probably popular. We want there to be lasting change. Sustainability is something that we are thinking a lot about as people in this sector. And for each of those 3 things, there are components that underpin them. For wholesome organizations, we've seen that leadership and governance is an important ongoing conversation. How we build our culture and systems, how we think about our organization sustainability in the long term. For when we think about programs, we are thinking about how we design for them, how we implement, how we develop proper theories and pathways to change, and also how we learn and adopt. But when we are thinking about lasting change, we are thinking we've got to be changing something bigger than just, the immediate. We've got to be having a broader systemic view to things. So systems change is a big issue. We've got to be advocating for something better. Equity and inclusion and sustainability and scalability are also the other components of lasting change that you're going to be touching on today.
Thank you so much. So I think you can have a look and continue just to absorb those 3 areas. And of course, this doesn't cover all of it, we identified the ones that we believe if you have all this working relatively well, you begin to see compounded, you begin to see acceleration, you begin to see large scale impact. So of course, all of these are broader headings, and under this we have specific areas we've touched on. And of course, we are open to hear from you at the areas maybe we are not even thinking about that you may be affecting you on a day-to-day basis. So what we are going to do is next is we are going to ask you to take a journey with us, and we are going to share with you a series of prompts. And we are going to ask you just to think through. It's nothing too complex, but it'll be questions for you to say, what's the state you're in? And we are kind of calling it an organization health check. So think about when you go to the hospital and you go to the triage and they check your temperature, blood pressure, ask you, when did you last have a meal? You know, how many hours do you sleep at night? And based on that, it kind of gives you a framework. And that's something we want to do today. It's no pressure. We'd like you to engage and just be candid with yourself. And remember, you won't have to share with us your responses. So this is a reflection for you. Just ask yourself, what does this mean for us? And by the way, I am aware some people are organizations here that may be for profit, some are CBOs, NGOs. We believe this applies across the board. So it's for you to assess and ask yourself, do I have all these things in place? And it's supposed to start you on a journey of asking questions. I seem to be doing well on my programming work, or for you, if you're for profit on the kind of products I do, then you realize, oh, but my organization, wow, there are very many things I've never thought about that are key, that are important. Maybe you're thinking about creating lasting impact. So maybe you have fantastic structures in place, good programs, good products, but you're not sure, is this going to move the needle? Will this make a scratch on the surface of this complex world that we live in? So today we are taking time to reflect. So I want you to imagine this is a therapy session. Please resource yourself. You need to get a glass of water, get a hot cup of something. I just want you to relax and get into the zone. And it's just for you to explore. And I know this is something a lot of leaders rarely get time to do, where you just sit and kind of do an overview. Many of us are great at doing the usual annual strategy, quickly make a plan and start implementing. But this is for us to think a bit long-term and I think a bit broader. So I'm going to invite Mumbi and Moses, who will take it from here and walk us through the next session. You're so welcome, and thanks for coming on time.
Right. Thank you so much, Maxi and Julian, for that well elaborated introduction on, just sharing on why we're here. And as your therapist, as your organizational therapist for the day, please don't ask me about my certifications. I am a doctor, trust me. But anyway, sorry. So yeah, my name is Moses Moy, and I am from Development Dynamics. And with me today, my therapist partner is Mombi Kanyogo. Maybe she can say a word or two so you can see on the screen who this is, and then, just do a quick wave. Mombi.
Hi, and thanks for the introduction, Moses. Yes, we are leading this practice together today.
Yeah. Yeah. So again, just thank you for that introduction, and in continuing with this spirit of pause and reflection, we wanted to facilitate this reflection session with the carefully curated set of 27 questions, which were shared with you upon registration, just so that you can review, see the areas that we would be thinking about within this therapy session, as we are calling it. And this is primarily predicated upon the 3 focus areas that we will be conversing around, that we will be having dialogue around. And this is what Maxi and Julian have mentioned: wholesome organizations, holistic programs, and lasting change. And so, given that these are the 3 sections that we're covering, the 27 curated questions will allow you to assess from your perspective as a representative of your organization, where do we lie against these three sections. Mumbi. So yeah, go ahead.
So just to reiterate what Moses has just said, the importance of this particular section is honesty to yourself. And then it's also just to add I think the reason why this is also why we've also situated this as a personal sort of reflection before we go into our breakout rooms is to give you the time to be honest, without the pressure of having your peers, your colleagues looking over your shoulder. So it's an opportunity to really think about, number one, where's it that you're really thriving? Where is it that you're really thriving in terms of your programs, the impact that you're making, the change that you're making, and then also the structure of your organization. And then for you to also just to think about to yourself as well, where are we doing okay in some areas, and where are we also struggling? So where is there sort of a mix in how well we're doing? And then the last thing, this is the one that takes the most bravery and the most honesty, is to admit to yourself the areas in terms of your programs, the change you're making, your organizational structure, where you're struggling and where you might need a little bit help, a lot of help in the future. So really the no pressure, this is an opportunity for you to think, reflect, be honest with yourself about how work is going. And the importance of this session is also the fact that, as Maxi and Julian was saying, oftentimes we're so busy with programming, with fundraising, that we don't actually have the opportunity to actually assess what our internal work looks like. So really use this session as an opportunity to do that. So now going into how we're going to be doing. So we're going to be using a tool called Meter. I'm sure many of you have encountered this tool and used it in your own work. And we'll be using it to submit our responses to a set of questions that are aligned with each of the 3 sections. So what we're going to do is share the code for the session in the chat. So Moses is just going to do this now. And so you're going to use that code to log into Mentimeter. So the website is literally menti.com. So you log on to there and then use this code to log into a particular quiz. And then what you'll do is that you'll find sets of questions, and essentially these questions form the substance of the health check that we're doing today. So as Moses had said, that this reflection section is divided into 3 sections. So the first section, of course, is wholesome organization. Second is holistic programs. And the third is lasting change. So under each section, there's going to be 9 questions that you're going to be using in order to guide the reflection now. So each question has a rating scale. So you'll find 3 answers for each question. And the rating scale is from 1 to 3. So Moses is just going to share what it looks like. So the rating scale is 1 to 3. And as you're answering each question, please make sure to just note the question, the number that's in brackets next to the answer. So the highest score is 3 and the lowest score is 1. So for example, if we have a question that's asking you, like, how effective are your programs, for example, the first one will be like, not effective at all, so it will have 1 next to it. Then somewhat effective will have 2 next to it, and then very effective will have 3 next to it. So just note down that answer on a piece of paper right next to you. And then after we have completed each section, so remember the 3 sections that the questions are organized in, we'll total up the scores for that particular section. And this will basically give us an idea of how well, like in terms of this health check, so how healthy we are in that particular area of our work. So just make sure that you have a paper next to you to note down your scores. And then at the end of the section, we will pause, give you some time to total, and then move on to the next section. Oh, you're muted.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just trying to share my screen. I'm seeing that it's zooming in a bit too much. I don't know if this is the same that everyone else is seeing. I don't know if like, is it too zoomed in?
No, it's perfect. It's perfect.
Oh, it's perfect. Oh, this is good. Okay, good. So if you've already logged in, I believe you have been able to log in. You can share on the chat if you're going through any struggles in logging in, and our team on the back end will be quick in helping you with that. So for this reflection session, we have designed it to where you will be doing it at your own pace. But a key instruction that we would have is that when you get to, so we like as we said, it's wholesome organization, holistic programs, and lasting change. Once you get done with the section on wholesome organizations, be keen not to rush, but to tabulate your totals before moving on to the next section. And we will be doing this together. So, and as you're submitting your responses, as you can already see on the screen, we're seeing the results that are coming in. So for instance, how effectively is your organization's leadership structure aligned with your social impact mission? We're seeing responses coming in partially and fully aligned. We can just give it some time as more responses come in, just to see how it's coming, how it's going through.
And then just be sure to note your score on a piece of paper next to you.
Please do not forget to do that. It's a reflection session, and it's important. As therapists, we notice the importance of recording some of these reflections that you're making. And so we have ensured that it is an intentional practice in this session. I can move on to the next. There we go. So how diverse are the voices and perspectives that your organization has? How well are they being brought into decision making? So we see some good responses coming in. Next up, does the organization have clear governance practices and policies? There we go. Yeah, right. So does your culture encourage collaboration, innovation? Is it one person that dictates how things are going? Or are we getting everybody in the room well understood? Everyone defining what the North Star of our organization is? Then we can get into skills and stuff. We have a good number that are managing, which is good. There we are. Some of us are struggling. So it would be very interesting also during the course of the session that we are having to, within the dialogue that we will have, get to hear some of the experiences that we have. So for those, for instance, in this section where we're talking about culture and there being some open internal communication, where there's the not at all response. And by the way, for the responses coming in, as was mentioned, one, when you're jotting down, one ideally is the lowest score, 3 being the highest score. So for those that are scoring 1, what are the pain points that you're observing? For those scoring 3, you're clearly thriving. What does that look like and what lessons can be borrowed therein? There we go. There we go, I think.
Moses, are you speaking?
No, I'm not speaking. Giving time for the reflection to sort of be done. But yeah, the results.
We like your voice on commentary, so you can keep going.
Yeah, so I just want to make sure that it doesn't overcrowd the questions coming in as they're being reflected on. But the results are communicating quite well how we are distributed amongst ourselves. So this is really good. Let's go to the next. There we are. The time inputs. We're actually heading into June, so I'm wondering if some of us are rushing. For those that have written consistently, I hope as June approaches, the honesty in our response is well reflected when the auditor, with the audits going on. But yeah. And so, as we had mentioned, ensure that as you're stating your responses or submitting your responses rather, you're also jotting this down so that you can be in a position to total your scores and see how and where you have, how well you have performed in that specific area. Yeah, so this is where we will be in a position to do that. And please note that the total pass section should ideally be 27. And so, yeah, you can check your total against 27 and maybe give yourself a percentage as well and a grade against it. So we can go on to the next section, which is holistic programs. And yeah, here we go.
So the first question we have here is, are your programs informed by a needs assessment and evidence-based insight? So people have already gone ahead. We'll give others time to catch up. So most people are using solid data and insights, which is encouraging. Some people are informed by wisdom from just observation, but for the most part, solid data and insights. Maybe Moses, we can go to the next. How often do you co-design the programs initiatives with stakeholders and communities you serve? So many folks are really community oriented. That's great to see. It's not even something to think about. It's just actually the status quo, the standard. That's exciting. Then, do your programs initiatives have specific activities set against milestones? Mostly yes.
Yeah, mostly yes. Yeah.
Mostly yes.
So I guess no one over here is shooting and, you know, like aiming for the clouds. Yeah, then we can go on to the next.
Do you have a current theory of change in place for each of your programs? Mostly applied consistently.
This is where the therapist dangles their head and they say, interesting. Joking. So we can go on to next.
Is your MEL plan well-resourced and in use? I feel like everyone's programs are extremely healthy. We can just end the quiz right here.
Yeah.
There we go. So submissions have come in.
Are you able to prove using evidence the impact of your programs and initiatives? This is a big question that we are all answering. I think I'm trying to answer this in relation to narrative change. How do you measure and prove the impact of your messaging over generations? Given that we know it takes like 3 generations to shift a particular narrative.
Right. And are you using metrics that matter as well?
Right. Yeah.
To share the same. Yeah. So
and not, go ahead.
56% of people are like, yes, 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 indeed. So that's a good thing. So let's go on to the next.
So do you have a system for collecting, analyzing, and reflecting on feedback from stakeholders and communities you engage with? So this is kind of equally spaced or equally distributed.
Yeah. It's looking like a peace sign.
Mm.
We can go on to the next.
Do you adapt your programs based on new insights as you implement the programs? Okay, so honesty is here, being served hot, periodically, insight-based.
It would be interesting to hear those that are insight-based. How is it that you have navigated ensuring that that's institutionalized and followed?
Mm.
That would be an interesting lesson to learn.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, good.
Also, everyone is sharing and collaborating. This is exciting. No one is keeping things to themselves.
Right. So which is good because that's that ecosystem level of thinking. We no longer function as silos. So go on to the next.
So we've come to the end of the section for holistic programs. So now you'll just give you like 2 minutes to top your scores, and then we'll go up to the final one, which is lasting change.
And remember that the score is out of 27. So be keen to see how well, again, you've done in this section. And interestingly, also compare, as at this point, how well you've done if you're to compare it to wholesome organizations. What are some of the things that I hope this is triggering some thoughts therein. Yeah, so just a few more seconds so we can do this. We have a very huge belief that all of us are pretty good at math, and arithmetic was something that came easy. So just a few more seconds and we'll head into the next, which is the last section of, of this. There we go. So now we're talking about lasting change. And so, yeah, are we addressing the root causes of the issues that caused us to come up? I love the honesty that is being presented. I think we have asked this question before, and I don't think anyone said no. So this is interesting.
For anyone who would have joined, we are coming to you live from Nairobi. Anyway, we are conducting an organizational health check against 3 particular areas. How strong or healthy your organization is, how strong your program is, and how healthy the kind of impact or broader sort of change you are making. We are using a Mentimeter. The code is up there, 29362534. And you can join in at any time on the Mentimeter. Everything else is very self-explanatory. We are right now just filling the sections, which is a very individual exercise that Mumbi from Well-Made Strategy and Moses from Development Dynamics are taking us through. Back to you guys in the studio.
Thank you. Then we go to the next, inclusivity. Oh, wow, good. So for those that are getting 3 in a lot of their scores, there's quite a number of lessons that we're edging to hear from you. And also those that are doing partially well, it would also be interesting to hear what lessons, what's working, what's not working, what approaches you are intending to consider.
Mm-hmm.
うん。 Mm-hmm. うん。 Mm-hmm. うん。 Mm-hmm. うん。 Mm-hmm. うん。 Mm-hmm. うん。 Mm-hmm. うん。 Mm-hmm. うん。 Mm-hmm. うん。 Mm-hmm. うん。 Mm-hmm. うん。 Mm-hmm. うん。 Mm-hmm. うん。 Mm-hmm. うん。 Mm-hmm. うん。 Mm-hmm. うん。 Mm-hmm. うん。 Mm-hmm. うん。 Mm-hmm. うん。 Mm-hmm. うん。 Mm-hmm. うん。 Mm-hmm. うん。 Mm-hmm. うん。 Mm-hmm. うん。 Mm-hmm. うん。 Mm-hmm. うん。 Mm-hmm. うん。 Mm-hmm. うん。 Mm-hmm. うん。 Mm-hmm. うん。 Mm-hmm. うん。 Mm-hmm. うん。 Mm-hmm. うん。 Mm-hmm. うん。 Mm-hmm. うん。 Mm-hmm. うん。 Mm-hmm. うん。 Mm-hmm. うん。 Mm-hmm. うん。 Mm-hmm. うん。 Mm-hmm. うん。 Mm-hmm. うん。 Mm-hmm. うん。 Mm-hmm. うん。 Mm-hmm. うん。 Mm-hmm. うん。 Mm-hmm. うん。 Mm-hmm. うん。 Mm-hmm. うん。 Mm-hmm. うん。 Mm-hmm. うん。 Mm-hmm. うん。 Mm-hmm. うん。 Mm-hmm. うん。 Mm-hmm. うん。 Mm-hmm. うん。 Mm-hmm. うん。 Mm-hmm. うん。 Mm-hmm. うん。 Mm-hmm. うん。 Mm-hmm. うん。 Mm-hmm. うん。
Right. So we're almost done with the reflecting. I hope your therapist for the day has not bombarded you with too many questions, but I do hope that the questions have been eye-opening. We shall find out later. Interesting. So for the 6%, you know, if I need to look up my now on the chat, or you should be in text, like we can talk further about this. If there are any openings, I'm joking. Can go on to the next. There you go. This is interesting. How well are we thinking about the models that we're using in our approaches, and are they, can they be used in other regions based off of the success stories they're generating? And I think we're close to the last. Right. And so again, total your scores, and I hope this has been, I think for this one, we will request that if you've totaled your score, you can probably click on the like button so that we can all be confident that we're all on the same page, and that we have all arrived at the end of this stage of our reflection, so that we're all, again, as I said, moving well together. So yeah. So give just a bit of time. Right. I'm seeing only 5 likes. I'm guessing that there are way more. So I do hope that we've all been in a position to do this collectively and at close to the same pace. But now that we're to the end, one very important question that we'd like to ask is, based off of your scoring on the 3 pillars, where do you feel like you're lagging? And so I'm seeing some talking about lasting change, holistic programs. I think for this one, we would like to have, we are 35 in the call. So we're hoping less team at DD and at WMS, we're hoping that we can get to around 20 responses, so that we can be sure that this assessment has been done by everyone, and that everyone's at the point where they're cognizant of where they feel like they lie in terms of the organization, where they feel like they are, in terms of the outcome of the therapy session, So we do invite your responses to the same. Also, if you're not done responding to the Menti questions, we will give a window of time, around 2 or 3 minutes max, so that we're also in a position to then transition to the next stage of our conversation for the day.
I'm getting a few more answers. So we have lasting change organizations seem to be the biggest ones, which makes sense because the day-to-day is within programming. So it makes sense. Okay, I think we've gotten quite a few responses. Maybe the next one.
Yeah, no, this is where we were going to then, so the purpose of this last section was for us also to see during the next stage of this is to break out into rooms based off of the 3 pillars. So this being wholesome organizations, holistic programs, and lasting change. And the reason why this particular part was very important to ensure you submit a response towards is when we do the breakout rooms, I think, which is being done right now by the host, we will be in a position to ourselves and our attention to the conversation areas that have been picked up. So lasting change, one where you felt like you were lagging behind. It would be interesting for you in that stage to ask the relevant questions that you feel would help in moving the needles significantly within those that have submitted holistic programs is where they feel like the pain point of the work that they're doing is. And even for wholesome organizations, be keen to listen to areas where you're lagging in, also contribute to where you feel like as another option would be really good. So I see, Julian, you raised your hand. I can maybe instruct
absolutely.
the host to allow us.
Actually, I was curious on 2 comments there. Maybe if someone would like to share their query around power balancing programs. And there's one there I've seen, calculating social impact. And I take note about calculating because of the actual tabulation. So maybe you could tell us a little bit more what you mean by that. Whoever had power balancing programs and then calculating social impact.
Feel free to just unmute and share your reflection.
Hello, I'm the one who typed that question around power balancing programs. I could have got it wrong. That was asking how our programs ensure that, I think there is something to do with the equity in programs and power relations. So that's when the issue of power balance, how do we balance power, even when we are from their end? Because for us, we think about safeguarding from our end, but at the other side, I didn't know exactly how that is done. Thank you.
And without being extractive, it's a really nice one. Okay.
Yeah.
Before maybe we open for a response, maybe someone could talk a little about calculating social impact. Maybe articulate it better for us and also for everyone on the call.
Yeah, as you purpose to unmute, Agnes, I know you're joining us from Uganda. I hope and believe that you will land yourself in a breakout group where we'll actually be honing a little further on the lasting change part of the 3 pillars, where we will now bring that out more. But yes, as Julian asks, anyone to reflect out the calculating social impact. Maybe it will to come as a better reflection in the breakout room. So is this the stage, Mumbi, Moses, that we get into the breakout room?
Yes. And so what we'll be doing is instead of going between 3 groups, the moderator will cover the 3 sections within their particular group. And we will use it as an opportunity to brainstorm and exchange ideas, given that there's some areas that some people are thriving at, and then other ones where other people are. So we're hoping that the randomness, the random allocation of Zoom will give us the perfect mix. So
shortly.
Now.
This was a random selection. So we have Damaris, Agnes, Bridget, Evelyn, Flora, Edward Kagure, Benson, and myself. Karibu sana. Hi, yes, thank you. Just if you can wave, I can be sure that I'm not speaking to a microphone. I'm speaking with us as individuals here, and we've also guessed. Yes, thank you, Evelyn. Thank you, Damaris. Flora and Benson and Bridget and Edward, Agnes, thank you. So the idea in this space is for us to just get into a deep dive conversation around where we feel in our respective scoring, where we scored highest, where we feel like we scored mid, and where we scored a little different, maybe much lower than you may think is desirable. So the three areas, again, just because this is maybe very new as a structure, it's wholesome organizations where we are looking at aspects of leadership and governance, aspects of culture and systems, and aspects of financial sustainability. Then we want to check and hear from you if you have aspects of program design and implementation and theory of change and learning, adaptation and monitoring that you feel are at any one of the ranges, and lasting change, the issues that we were just talking about in terms of systems change and equity and inclusion and sustainability, but from a broader environmental, social governance kind of sustainability and scalability. So Bridget, your hand is up first. The structure here is really genuinely just to have conversation and to reflect with each other. We believe, as we were saying at the top of this, that today you are the facilitator, you are the expert, and we want to hear from you and be able to establish any pain points that we could, offer like a different consultative hour much later. But for now, Bridget, karibu sana. Your hand is up, so maybe you can just begin by sharing your reflections, and then we'll get into the question that Agnes asked because you're here. Bridget, you want to unmute? Oh, you're typing, so I suppose you're probably moving. Okay, fantastic. Yes, Agnes, maybe just to hear from you, when you think about power dynamics and how that falls in especially the arena of thinking about how you design your programs, thinking about how you hire, thinking about how you manage the staff, but also manage the programs. In your work with Impact and Innovations Development Center, what are your experiences like? And I know you mentioned a bit about safeguarding, but really just what are your experiences like?
Yeah, thank you, Doctor. I don't know how to pronounce your first name, so I'll call you Gitau.
No, Maxi. It's all right. Maxi is fine.
Okay, so I'm not sure I'm going to answer this question right, because we are not an implementing organization, but rather we are a technical assistance organization that supports organizations that are doing work around social development for impactful programming. So, but as we do that work, we are interested in the impact at the end of the day. So we work with the entire journey as learning partners with organizations, but we do not get to the field to say we are the ones implementing and taking care of the power dynamics that happen at implementation. And that was my entry point to ask the question from a learning perspective. How can power dynamics be managed so that maybe it can be a learning that I take home? Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And I hear you say that you offer a learning journey, and I guess the idea about a learning journey is three things: the right questions, the right activities to track those questions, and then the right resources to ensure that you are able to answer those questions with the activities that you've put. So I envy the work you're doing. I think it's fantastic. Even though you're not an implementer, you're supporting implementers in their learning journey. My own reflection about how power dynamics play, and I welcome Flora and Benson and Damaris and Bridget and Elizabeth and Evelyn to equally reflect, is when we are especially thinking about program design, there is an aspect about piecing together the original concept note or concept paper or a request for proposal with, you know, with the expression of interest. Often we tend to do that from we who are already like exposed know this, but interestingly, the person or the people who would then sign up on this, even with inside the institutions or the organizations that we work for, whether it's for TA or for actual implementation or even an investor, is people who probably the lived reality is a little different. And we have experienced likewise situations where there is need to consult a lot more on the ground before putting thoughts and reflections and a concept and designing like a theory of change. There is need to consult a lot more with whoever has the biggest lived experience. So ensuring that the voice of experience, the voice of lived experience is strongest, and at times, hopefully, a lot more stronger than the voice of expertise or the voice of influence. And power dynamics begin to play from that stage. And managing that is saying, if we are funders or we are supporting funders to think about their pathway to change, their pathway to impact, or we are supporting change makers to think about their programs and their scale, we have to ensure that we are asking, can we pause? Can we reflect? Can we give an opportunity for the lived experience to actually input and not trash it? Because if we skip that stage, what we then end up having is good programs who are not necessarily going to be affected by the eventual outcome of these programs. So that's sort of a bit of how my reflection comes into it. But I would be happy to hear how, and we also introduce briefly ourselves and who's in the team and from where, at least from Agnes's part, I could tell she's from Uganda. Damaris, where are you joining us from? Do you have a reflection? Flora, Benson, Elizabeth, Edward, Evelyn, any of you can just jump in, and it could be around any of the discussion points, from lasting change to wholesome organization to holistic programs, any of the reflections that you have, perhaps. Bridget, you were typing. Okay, I don't see as though that has happened yet, so it's okay. Anyone with a reflection? Benson, where do you join us from, and any input into the conversation at hand? Any reflection?
Hi, Matt.
Hi, Benson.
Maxi.
Yes.
Benson here. Uganda.
Karibu sana. Where are you joining us from, Benson?
Hand, Uganda.
Oh, Richa hand, Rahu. Fantastic.
Yes.
Yes, you're the head of programs at Rahu, right?
Yes, Maxi.
Very, very interesting to have at least two people coming from Uganda. We are actually there next week doing a live impact session of this nature, one in Mukono on Friday the 7th and one in Kampala on Saturday the 8th. They'll be in person, there'll be entire mornings. So we will probably reach out to you to work out with you. But Benson, I'm sure we are with you also for the Bili Now Summit next week. So we hope to have more conversations. Any reflection though on what is your biggest pain point in those three areas of organizational health?
Yeah, I think for me it's the measurement of impact. There are those areas where we are able to do so. There are areas where we are struggling. So and I think we have struggled with this question for some time. But also when you talk about a holistic program, the funding landscape is not as such that you can actually have holistic programs if you want to have lasting change. Sometimes probably this is unpopular. Sometimes I just think that people want to give money and keep the problems going and going because again, if you want to have lasting impact, you need to be in a place for some time longer, working with the communities. But if we're going to have funding for 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, that's not how we are going to have lasting impact. So sometimes the funding landscape dictates how that lasting change looks like. But also there are not as many partners that want to support to fund strategic plans of organizations, yet probably that will feed into the holistic programs or the lasting change. I think for governance, financial sustainability, I can't say we are there yet, but at least we are in the right direction. Yeah, that's my reflection, Maxi.
Thank you, Benson. And you mentioned two things that are important. One is the fact that if there is short funding or very earmarked funding, it ceases to be impactful enough to go the long haul because change, I think one person, Mumbi, mentioned how if it's behavior change you're trying to focus on, that takes 3 generations. 3 generations is like 30 years. So if there are narratives that need to change in society around a particular area that we are doing, 9-month projects, 1-year projects, before you break ground, it's already over. Those don't really. I think we have, by conversations like this, the collective ammunition to work with funders and tell them, let's rethink the funding model. Let's establish more trust-based partnerships that allow us to think together over a long period of time. What are the actual indicators of change, not just a potential outcome, not one person or 50 people having gone to school, but being able to try to track the actual change on it. And increasingly, if we have grounded work like Rahu does right now on the, it's after many years of programming, we are able to negotiate and say, let's think about this. You can fund an activity or you can be part of funding for change. Also, because it cannot be one single funder. There isn't a single funder in the world that has enough money to fund all the change. So it takes collective funding modalities, but it also takes collective programming modalities. And I think a key thing that's arising for me is just the need of cooperation and a collective approach to impact. I think with the best intentions, any of the work that either of us are doing on ground won't materialize to change if we do it alone. We will need to collaborate with policymakers if we are doing implementation, or if we are doing advocacy, we will need to collaborate with people who are doing service delivery, for instance, or people who are doing an arm of behavior change or something of that nature, so that collectively we can work on impact. So what am I saying in that case? That let's appreciate and think how much more we can do collective bargain with the funders, but also let's push the funders and maybe support them to hold like donor roundtables of how they can do collective funding. The spirit now is collective thinking, collective mobility. Bridget, you've said, I'm glad I'm here. This comes after a meeting I had with my team to talk about the impact our program has had for the past few years. And all I can say is I'm learning, and we are about to roll it out and get deeper into it. We are happy to offer a complimentary conversation with you, Bridget, post this, because this is only, I think we have 4 more minutes to speak. Should you want just to touch base as to what are the right questions to ask even as we roll out, or what are the lines of inquiry that we need to begin tracking early enough, or to help us track backwards, we are really happy to have a conversation of that nature. We'll be providing our details at the end. Edwin Kagure from Nairobi, founder of Junglelani Tales. Oh, Jangolani Tales. Ah, interesting. My daughter, who was just sneaking here to take my water, I don't know why she thinks it's better than hers, is a fan of Jangolani Tales. And it's interesting that you are dealing with climate action and inspiring the next generation to actually be on the forefront. And the lasting change, considering the media content you have will have a lifespan. I think yours is very true. You know, as we were saying earlier, it takes generations to change. And because you're starting early, targeting the ones that are most impressionable, but also the ones who will have a longer lifespan because it keeps increasing. So our children right now will live a longer life than ours. So we really ought to be preparing a better world for them. And you're just the Jungle Tales and what you're doing in that sector is very admirable. Elizabeth and Flora, do you both, either of you, want to reflect as and Edward as well? Edward has reflected. Yes, Elizabeth?
So it's Damaris. Can I say something?
Yes, by all means.
So I'm Damaris Karaoke. I work for Hans Seidel Foundation. So that's a mouthful, so I always just say HSF. So I'm the program manager for gender equality. So primarily we're a donor organization. So I kind of hear what Benson is saying and his sentiments when it comes to the funding landscape. So I've really put some points that I'll really try and rush through. So first of all, okay, my first point is on time. So time in the sense that, you know, even as donors, we have limited amount of time. Say all donors always fund within cycles. So there are people who do 1-year cycles, 2-year, 2-year cycles, 3-year cycles, and pegged on these cycles are what needs to be achieved within those cycles. And as you've rightly put it, we cannot achieve any lasting change within a short period of time. Because once you close off a funding cycle, then you have to move on to the next thing. And even as a donor, I always find that very, very, problematic, but it's the reality of the situation. So what I always advise my partners is that you have to always prepare, even when you're in the middle of the funding cycle, who's your next audience, like who's your next donor, so that you create this chain that you're moving from one step to another. So one, you have organizations that are able, for example, to fund your strategy or organizational building. Then you can find the next donor who can fund now the activities like that. Don't create a break. You have to think about it quite long term. And then, sorry, my phone. Then the second one is on the restricted funding. So funding will never be enough. And more we're seeing donors are not supporting organizational structures. So overhead, so strategy, salaries, operational costs, all of that. And that comes into the question about the equity, because we always ask a question, if we're going to fund your organization, so how much is it getting to the ground? And that's where the equity, the power balance, and the justice has to come, because most of the time we have to ask the question, whose needs are we meeting? Are we meeting one, the donors' needs, the organization's needs, or the target group's needs? So they all have to be balanced. They can't be 50-50, but at least create an equilibrium where everybody is happy. But most of the time, what we usually see is that when organizations are approaching donors, their needs overshadow the needs of the target group. And then lastly, I think going back to what you're talking about, the collaborating effort. So because the needs, especially in the region that we're serving, are so, they're not unique, but the thing is we tend to really over-fragment the problems. And then once you come to us, we're not able to understand. So what really is the need? What are you actually targeting? What do you want to solve? And I guess that goes back to most where people are struggling with the holistic change, because we're not really clear on what is the issue, what is the problem, and what is the change that we need to see. So thank you.
Thank you so much. I see we have 25 seconds countdown, and I could not thank you all enough for being in this group. I think we have a chance to break back into the main group and sort of begin to wrap it up. So thank you all, and see you in the main group shortly.
Thank you.
Welcome back, everybody.
That was super fast. Yes.
I know. I noticed I was swinging by the various rooms and I could hear the engaging conversation. It was really encouraging to do. Of course, we take cognizance, it's end of the day and it's virtual, so there's only so much we can talk about. But first, before we kind of wind up and kind of bring this home as to why we're doing all of this, I'd just like to open just for people to share any learnings you picked up. Something you did maybe from your sessions, from a colleague. Please just give it a few minutes. Please share something that stood out for you. I think I heard someone talking about how there are certain specific things they're going to go share back with their colleagues at work, which is great. Some people have sent me messages directly saying, oh, I've never thought about this piece. So please, I would really be chuffed to hear you share if there's something that sparked reflection for you.
Damaris, if I can volunteer you from our group to sort of also have your voice with the larger team. We were 10, now we are 30. So just to increase, you had 3 solid points that I think really sum up what the entire conversation was about.
Okay, my voice is a bit shaky. It's been a long day, so I'm a bit tired, so don't mind me. So I'm Damaris Karaoke. I work for the Hand Side of Foundation, which we call HSF. I'm a program manager for gender equality, and we're primarily a donor organization. So I was speaking about the lasting change component, especially from a donor perspective, and I gave my insights on 3 things. So 1, the time issue, where I talked about, even us as donors, we're really restricted on the time, because we do funding within cycles, whether it's in 6 months, 1 year, 3 years. I think the max I've ever seen is like 5-year cycle. So during that cycle, the assumption is you should be able to create a program all the way from, the design all the way to the evaluation. And somehow everybody expects that you should have achieved lasting change. And that's impossible. Like you guys keep referring to that, for lasting change to occur, you need about 30 years. But at the same time, I always say that for organizations who are now the receiving of the funding, you always have to look long term. So you're in the middle of a 5-year cycle. Within that cycle, you should also start preparing for the next funding cycle so that you create a chain where you're joining the dots that hopefully adds up to the 30 years so that you can say within this 30 years as an organization, we've been able to have this sort of impact. And then secondly is the thing where I ask this question repeatedly, whose needs are we actually meeting? Is it the donor needs or the investor needs? Is it that particular organizational needs, or is it the target group needs? Most of the time, there's always a power imbalance where the donor's needs has to come first. But also we need to change that mindset and say that, you know, yes, you have your needs as the donor or the investor, but you need to have that sense of equity and justice where especially the target group's needs are actually coming, you know, way above both the donor and organizations funding. So that's very, very important. But again, I mean, it's the way the world works, you know, but people are really, really trying. Even myself within my organization, I'm really trying to put that, you know, it's the target group's needs that really have to come first. And then most importantly is the collaborative effort that you talked about. You know, in a time where funding is becoming less and less, it's shrinking, and also time, we don't have time on our side. We have to really, really collaborate. So look at who within your network can you bring on board, who can you collaborate with. And collaborating is not just about the money bit, it's about the resource, the skill sets, the human resources that you can come together so that we can all achieve towards something. Because what we're seeing, especially in Kenya, is that the core problems are the same. Say, for example, poverty is, you know, the core problem. But because there's so many players within that field, what happens is we tend to over-fragment or over-represent what the main problem is. So in the end, you get lost and you really don't know what are you actually trying to solve. And then goes back to the question of you're not really making any change because your question or your motivation at the very beginning is misplaced or misconstructed or something of the sort. So yeah, thank you.
Thanks
For reflecting loudly. Any one of the colleagues from Uganda as well that would like to chime in, or any other group? You can raise your hand, or you can just unmute and offer any reflection. Are we seeing who is going to join? Or Moses and Mumbi, you can volunteer someone from your respective groups as well to any thought that came out strong.
Yeah. So we had an interesting reflection around theories of change and around telling impact stories. And one of I think the two individuals that were having really good conversations around this was Sylvia Obaga and Valerie Kamati as well. And I think it was interesting hearing the reflection shared. And I would like to invite Valerie, especially because I think a lot of your work revolves around PR and comms, and how you've found yourselves navigating or thinking around telling impact stories. I think you were sharing that, are we telling our clients' impact story or our impact story? I think it would be interesting to share that in the presence of the panel and see some of the questions or comments that would come in from that. Valerie?
All right, thanks, Moses. First of all, I said if this is therapy, it can't be once, guys. Please, thank you. Because now we are sick and we help. Anyway, on on the question that's given as Sylvia was now, is really the fact that developing a way of change is critical to the work that we do if we want to have lasting change, lasting impact. However, the approach that we take, or that sometimes being in the PR and communications consultancy space, there is a direction that clients would want you to go that may not necessarily be the way to go. Tied to what who spoke before, was it Damaris? And she spoke really well about it. Is it donor driven or is it the community driven? Am I telling the story of the PR firm that I work for? Am I telling the story of the client? Or am I telling the story of the community? Because where is the change? And how do we all then collaborate and say, because of this chain of activities we have interacted with and conducted, this is the change that we see. So a specific pain point or need in the team would be, how do we go back and consider whose stories we're telling? Because we do a lot of the stories for our clients through annual reports, through published articles and videos and all that. But do we tell the story as a PR firm and how we are changing lives? And do we tell the stories of the communities whose lives are changing because of the work that is going on? So I'll stop there for now. Therapy must continue, guys.
Thank you so much for that. In fact, yesterday we were having a separate conversation, partner, and they told us they are now shifting their focus to be less extractive. So one of the things they are working toward is where, you know how sometimes everyone is looking for success stories, impact stories, and we go to the community, take photos, but we actually don't tell the story that matters to them. And what this organization is doing now is focusing on how do we get the story there. So in essence, just posters and tools in our storytelling. But how do we ensure that if there's an organization doing some work, we also get their story told that captures their reality while maintaining their dignity. So that as we amplify that story, someone may read their story and want to just win all the glory, and then they're just left there. As you all know the proverbial photo before and after, but we don't really know much more about the context of that person, issues around intersectionality and their reality. So that's nice to hear. That is something that is emerging. Yeah, I think Mombi, we jump to group now, maybe to see if there's someone from your group who had something to share.
Yeah.
Remember, there's a conversation around
that's the question I was going
to,
or the person I was going to volunteer. So Judith from our group works around women's economic empowerment, brought up the question of how do you ensure that like the bureaucracies are not, that there's bureaucracy in relation to like a project like actual implementers, you avoid that, making sure that it's affecting decision making and not slowing it down. So Minnie from our group had some interesting insights. Minnie, I think you're still here. Do you mind just unmuting and sharing just the ideas that you shared with us?
All right, thank you, Mombi. I'll be happy that an organization takes, whether it's for profit or it's for non-profit. Ideally, what informs whatever organizations we set up is there's always social impact or community impact. So one of the core one of the key focus areas are the core foundational elements of what you're setting up. Yeah. What were you addressing? What informed the setup of the organization? So even when you're selecting or appointing board members to help you govern the institution, the core foundational elements will always inform the direction. Am I passionate about that issue you want to resolve, or the problem you want to address within the community? That's one. The other core issue is the value system. The value system will always inform how an organization makes their decisions. Am I leaning towards one thing or another? There is integrity, there is equality, there is or inclusion, there is social justice, and so on and so forth. So those elements will always, number one, should always inform how you set up the board of directors, or whether they are executive or non-executive. Secondly, those elements also inform how decisions are made. And when those two are well laid out, then bureaucracy stops being becomes a non-issue rather. Yeah, so I think that I don't know, have I done it justice? But yeah, that was the thought process.
Absolutely. I love that. And I think it's about where the work takes precedence and everyone is able to understand that this is something that hampers how we contribute to impact the people we are serving. We can quickly group, because I think we've seen that a lot of times where you're in programs that you are in are yet to deliver it because they're still aligning. And I think we call it paralysis by analysis. Yeah. So I can tell by the energy levels, I think we've all engaged so well, and I'm so grateful for that. And I can see it's around 5:30, and I know some of us have probably kids coming home and just stuff to do, prepare for dinner and everything. So we don't hold you for too long. One thing I would like to do is just briefly let you know the next steps. So first thing I want to do, I want to share with you something is that we'll do a framework that kind of unpacks what we discussed today. And what we want to do is my screen swiping up. Sorry, I have so many windows open.
Yes, we're seeing the.
Great. So we are looking at the right thing. So this is what we present today. Okay, thanks everyone. So what we've done is today you noticed we have presented these key pillars, and then under each key pillar we went cascading. And these are the questions you were responding to earlier, and also what we were discussing. However, what we've done, just to bring it home, we've presented with you a series of steps you can take today. So the therapy has some treatment options. I think Valerie is the one who was talking about this. So what will happen here, we presented some ideas just to get you thinking. And this is for every category, simple steps that you can take today. So you don't need to set up a new budget stream. You don't need to convene a board meeting. This is something really amongst with your colleagues. And of course, with other things, you can begin to explore the journey towards getting wholesome. So looking at governance accountability, these are some steps you can begin to start your journey on. If it's financial sustainability, we've provided some insights, culture, and systems, and we've done this for all the entire range of questions you raise. So we are going to email this to everyone. That's the first thing we'll present to you. And then the second half of that is that we would like to, apologies, let me just switch screens here. And then lastly, we would like to welcome you to book a session with us. So what we mean here is that we will be sending you emails with an option to book sessions with us. So if there are specific areas you'd like to talk about with more, we are open for that. So that's what this session was for. It was for us to present these solutions and some of these ideas. So we're going to give you some time to think about it. And then in a week or so, we are going to send you an email with instructions on how you can book a session. And these sessions will collaborate, some maybe with WMS, some with DD, or some will be joint, depending on the challenge you want to discuss. So I don't know if there are any closing remarks as we wrap up, and also Maxi, as we begin to wind down the session. And yeah, and just to say thank you to everyone for hanging on and participating. And we really look forward to talking to you more and getting to learn more of the work that you do, the pain points that you have. But we are here to support you. And that's what this session was all about.
Yeah, so thank you, Julian, and thank you, Well-Made Strategy, for partnering with Development Dynamics on this one. As we met at the beginning, it's the second one we've done. This it's sort of done doing one. We had two folks in Uganda. We are next Friday, and exactly what this was today, an organizational. You mentioned the things that you know, you are sort of thinking through, and then now you went to see the specialist who you consulted a little bit with. You have diagnosed what your you know, what the areas, and we have provided a prescription, which is the tool that we are going to share after this, including a chance to book a complimentary session of focus and just like for your own organization, which we are willing to have. And from the last Thursday's team, what I mentioned at the beginning, we have this monthly sector shaping conversations every last Thursday of the evening, every last Thursday of the month, sorry. The next one will be about movement building, and we're going to be sending out the registration for that. It will be again on the last Thursday of June, and we look forward to engaging with you some more. Thank you. Across all groups, I think there was beautiful reflection. We're also going to upload this and share the video with you, just in case you want to listen in or see some transcriptions of what has transpired. And for us all, both the Well-Made Strategy team, from Julian, from Miles, and from who else of the DD team, Moses, and the rest of the team went there, and the ones who are also on transit back, and from myself, we say us, and we shall see you again in a month's time. Thank you.
Good evening.
Thank you, everyone. We can maybe stop the recording. Who has the ability to do so?